Hey there, and welcome back to my absolutely snail-paced Stranger Things Season 5 review. At long last, we've arrived at the finale, and I suspect this video is going to be rather long. I won't lie, I came into this season with a lot of hype, hope, and excitement, and whilst I wouldn't say that I've hated Season 5, I would say I've been a bit disappointed with it. Volume 1 started off with so much promise, and I do think over the course of the second volume, the cracks started to become more obvious, and the show became way less fun as a result. Will the finale be able to pull that back? Who knows, but let's see, shall we? We start off the episode with a bunch of soldiers entering the Upside Down to hunt after Al and her team, whilst Kay and some other random dude interrogate the guy who was manning the gate when they barged through last episode. As this is going on, she notices the radio setup that was helping them tap into the gate signal and realizes they've been sabotaging things from within Hawkins. She does end up going on the hunt after this, but at the same time, I'm not really sure as to why. For all she knows, wouldn't all of the team been in the back of that truck? There were heaps of them after all. She saw them directly. She does end up being right to search in Hawkins, but it's just curious, I guess. In the Upside Down, the team arrives at the lab and Al, Murray, Carly, and Hopper all get out and head inside, but not before we get a scene with Mike telling Al that this is it. One more fight and it's gonna all be over. And although many things could go wrong, he has faith they'll win. Obviously, this is juxtaposed against Al looking like she's decided to do what Carly said, and on a first watch through, it's really powerful. It feels like she's decided, but at the same time, you know that's not a satisfying ending. It makes you wonder what's gonna change to get her to decide to stay and fight and live her life with her friends and family. However, now looking back on the actual ending, I do find scenes like this frustrating and tedious to watch. They piss me off. I really don't like Al's ending, in case that's not obvious by this point. We briefly check back in with the kids in Camazotz, and they're all in their trance with Vecna, and then just to gross us out, they show us all the kids strapped into the Mind Flayer in the abyss with the particles being pumped into them, with the pumping getting faster and faster as I guess they need more power to move the worlds together. We have a look at Mr. Clark and Erica, who are discussing how it feels to be involved with saving the world, and whether the military is going to be able to catch up with the team in the Upside Down before the military turn up at the church. Pretty sure this is the last that we actually see of the two of them here. We don't see them get arrested or interrogated or anything. It's kind of a shame, but at the same time, I sort of get it too. It's not like they're hugely important to the endgame of the story or anything. Then again, the episode goes for over 2 hours, so I think it could have worked even if they were just dragged over to the radio station and interrogated there whilst they're trying to find Max and Vicky. It would have wrapped it up more nicely, I think. Here is where Kay realizes they've been based out of the radio station all along, when she notices the branded vans parked out the front of the church that Erica and Mr. Clark were inside. After a brief check-in with Vicky and Max, who are at the radio station sitting out the conflict and waiting for when Al's going to need Max's help, we shift into the Upside Down, where the Abyss team has arrived at the radio tower and begin their climb to the top to wait for the Abyss to be close enough to enter. Inside Hawkins' lab, Murray goes off to turn on the power, as apparently all they need is fuel. I find it hard to believe that the lab wouldn't have degraded in this environment with all the vines and shit crawling all over it, but I guess it's one of those things you're not supposed to take too seriously at the end of the day. Al goes inside the old tank room with Hopper and Carly, and as she makes her way to the top, she thinks about her childhood as an experiment. How she was nothing more than a slave who wasn't allowed to live free and was essentially abused in the name of science and national security. All of this, of course, is going to be playing into that decision she's going to be forced to make. Recognizing that she never got to have a proper life, and if she's ever caught, this is the fate that awaits a whole new generation of children who will be created with her blood. She and Hopper then go through the plan and what it'll entail, such as when they should attack, and this leads into a promise between the two of them. He promises that if something goes wrong, he won't pull her out, but of course, she in turn has to promise that if they win against Henry, she'll get out of the Upside Down. She doesn't remain behind to sacrifice herself, and they'll deal with Dr. K and her plans another day. This is yet another one of those scenes that just annoys me, you know? It feels like this was supposed to be her arc this episode. That she is so sure she's going to sacrifice herself, even as everybody tries to tell her they're willing to fight and help her, and eventually she comes to the realization and chooses to live and fight. Here though, whilst it's poetic that she actually mimics Hopper in so many ways, like when he was going to sacrifice himself to kill Vecna so she'd be safe, she then flips the script on him. I get it, I understand the writing in that way, I just think it sucks. Plus, it just doesn't make sense. Her killing herself or leaving forever won't save them now they've killed a bunch of military personnel, you know? Leaving means that they lose somebody who can actually help protect them from that. I still don't really understand how all of that works out, but we can get to that later in the episode, I guess. We return to the Upside Down for a little scene with Will and Mike, where Mike tries to settle his conscience for not realizing that anything up was Will, and I guess apologize for not knowing he had a crush on him. I know the tone of this scene's meant to be lighthearted and wholesome, and it is, but it also kind of felt weirdly written. I think a lot of it's fine, especially Mike blundering around and getting flustered, but it ends on this odd note. Will says he's so happy that everybody's accepted him, and they can all still be friends, with Mike replying, "Friends? No thanks. Best friends." this. It's such Hollywood writing, you know, where you hear a line and you wonder whether the writer has ever heard somebody have a conversation before, because who the hell speaks like this? We continue our very long, slow build with a check-in scene with Max and Vicky, where Vicky and her anxieties are starting to get on Max's nerves. Fair enough. She's spent close to 2 years in a coma, wakes up and can't physically help her friends, and is stuck with somebody she doesn't know who is acting massively needy. This doesn't seem like the personality type Max likes to deal with at the best of times, and certainly not in this context either. Vicky goes off to get some cereal, and as she does so, Max calls out for her to ask for some food for her too. However, when she turns to look, nobody's there, and she can also stand up when she was too weak to do so before. I will admit, this got me good. I thought that when she stood up and started walking and there was water on the floor, that this was going to be some preemptive strike by Vecna, because you know, I thought he was going to be some huge mastermind who would outplay them at every turn early on. So this did get me on edge, but then of course there's the reveal that Eleven's taken her into her mind on her way to enter Henry's mind and attack him in Camazotz. I did feel bad for Vicky here, I will say. She's already massively anxious about what's going on, seeing as she has no idea as to whether Robin and the others are dead, whether they'll get attacked by demos, or whether the world is going to suddenly end. She then goes off to get some food to calm down, and when she returns, her only company in this empty building is now in a trance. I would also be panicking at this point. Here is where the tension well and truly starts to build in the episode. We return to the Upside Down, where the main party's arrived on the top of the tower and are waiting for their moment, which is when from out of the clouds they see the abyss starting to descend on them. The music and the visuals are so awesome here, and it well and truly gets you hyped up for the fight to come. For the most part, I do love this opening simply because it feels like it's all rapidly building to something insane. Whether or not you think the final battle lives up to the hype is largely irrelevant here. It's more the build-up that I think hits so well and gets you on the edge of your seat just waiting for something to happen. Things just keep building and building as we return to Al, Max, and Carly slowly approaching Vecna within Al's mind, which they use as the entry point into Camazotz. However, instead of just arriving conveniently in the field, they land in the hallway of the school where Joyce is handing out flyers to the play they're putting on, and so Max now has to lead them through Henry's memories to get where the children are being held. Thankfully, we don't have to sit through that because it would get rather tedious, and instead we cut over to Vicky, who has gotten a lot of screen time in this early section of the episode for one of the most minor members of the team. The soldiers arrive and barge in, however Max and Vicky are nowhere to be seen because she's taken them into the secret room hidden behind the bookshelf. The part I don't really get though is why she ends up just standing there on the landing. Is she not strong enough to carry Max down the stairs? Even just for a short while to give them some distance and thus less of a chance to be heard by the soldiers? Here is where things then got even more tense. On the tower, Lucas notices that the spire doesn't line up with the rift, and so as the abyss gets closer, it'll eventually destroy their tower and cause them all to fall to their deaths. Dustin gets on the radio and tells Hopper that Al has to hurry, and I gotta say that his angry/stressed panic voice, almost on the verge of a scream, is so good. The scene then jumps back and forth between Dustin raging and Hopper over the radio about how they're about to meet their grisly demise any second being crushed by a planet, and Al, Carly, and Max getting increasingly stressed as they're in the midst of Henry's memory of the school play, waiting for the moment they can move into the next one. It really got my heart racing, and part of me thought they'd be able to stop it just before it hits the tower, but it actually does hit. Steve straight up ends up falling off it, but since it was all done in slow-mo and they did a fade to black cutaway that lasted a few seconds, you just knew that somebody was going to reach over and save him in the nick of time. I don't think at any point in that sequence I did think he'd genuinely die. Jonathan saves him, and at the same time, Al and Co get into the house to find the seance, and she straight up yeets Henry out the window in one of the funniest moments of the episode. Seriously, the dude just goes flying. I do wonder though, could she have snapped his neck or something instead and just finished him off there, or is he too powerful for that kind of sneak attack? It just seems like it would have been the perfect time to ambush him, you know, when he has no idea that they're there and they can't fight back. Whilst Max reunites with Holly and tells the other skeptical children that Henry's a monster and she can prove it, we see our team climb their way into the abyss. What I want to know though is, why did Nancy climb in first? I mean, what was she going to accomplish? She has a gun, which we already know seems to have zero impact on demos, and so if something was there, she would have just been mauled to death. I reckon the best choice would have been Jonathan, who has a flamethrower and who can neutralize demos for a time, and Will, who can outright kill them with his hive mind powers. If they'd actually bothered to include demos in this part, they would have been in trouble. That being said, I know this is all meant to be in service to the Nancy the 80s action hero badass storyline, so I get why they did it this way too. They all stare across the abyss and get to soak in that they're on a different planet, which would be pretty awesome. I mean, quite literally nobody else in their lifetime will ever get close to stepping foot on an actual living, breathing world that they don't need a spacesuit or anything for. It would be awesome. Less awesome though when they realize they have to walk all the way over to the Hawkins lab, as that's where Holly fell out of her rift after briefly escaping Vecna. Speaking of Vecna, he makes his way back inside with his excellent angry crazy eyes and confronts Al, easily overpowering her, although part of this is an obvious gambit. She wants him to attack her and threaten her because it would allow the children who are hiding using Carly's powers to see the truth about who he is and what he wants to do. Once they see him scry into Al's mind using his monster arm, Max leads the kids in the escape, whilst Henry forces his way into Al's mind and sees that Carly's helping her, which makes him realize what just happened. What I do wonder though, is was he ever really overpowering her, or was she letting him see what she wanted him to see and putting up a token resistance, because otherwise he would have seen the next phase of their plan, right? She clearly expected all of this, and Carly was always going to charge him with that knife. So I guess she's way stronger than he gives her credit for? Well, I guess that's clear given she later defeats him, but still, it seems the entire plan hinged on him winning their exchange. What if he just straight up snapped her in half though? Or do we think that she was able to resist to the point that he wouldn't be able to do something like that? Regardless of the plan, she blasts him onto the table after he realizes the kids have escaped with Max, and it was all an illusion, only for Carly to rush in with a knife and try to stab him. However, this part was so stupid because she literally stops to say, "Hello, brother," with a fairly long pause before she attacks, which gives him time to teleport away. Why did they write it like this? I also wonder whether the knife would have even done anything to him. I get that he's in the dream world and he seems to be slightly more vulnerable here than when he's in his Vecna body in the real world, but he can even become Vecna here too. Would a knife seriously just kill him? Or would it only hurt him a little bit? Can they even fully kill him here without using Al's powers? So many questions, so few answers. I think the pacing does get thrown off by the next scene though. We're in a bit of a crunch time where you want the scenes to be really pushing for the story now, but here we slow it all down again for a scene in the Abyss. The first part of this scene really pissed me off, and I think it pissed off a lot of other people too. Lucas talks about how the Abyss isn't what he expected, and then he thought there'd be vines and demos and whatnot all over the place because that's part of their whole shtick, and this is the planet they're from. Dustin says he presumes that the hive mind works here much in the same way as it works in the Upside Down and Hawkins. So if Henry dies, then it's likely that all of his minions did too. Although I do wonder why that even works. Weren't the creatures of the Abyss already here when Henry first got blasted here by Al? Therefore, you'd expect that they're just linked to the Mind Flayer that this episode specifies is its own consciousness. Even if it was able to merge with it, why would it then die completely when he dies? Wouldn't it just return to being particles like it was before and still exist? Why would it die? Isn't he more of a host? It's all very confusing, and once again, there are no good answers. That being said, it doesn't even matter to this scene. The issue that we have here is that regardless of the nature of the connection and the hive mind, Henry isn't dead, and so his minions aren't dead either, so where the hell are they? I get that he probably didn't expect a counterattack, but he legitimately saw the scene where they're planning things. Could he not recall his army to defend the castle, so to speak? It just seems lazy and cheap. We have a brief little sequence here with Will and Mike where Will pumps him up and restores his faith that Al's safe and able to defeat Henry, which once again just pisses me off. Anything to do with Mike and Eleven's pissing me off in this episode. We then finish off with a scene that would have felt more interesting in previous episodes. Steve and Jonathan make peace and potentially walk the first couple of steps towards becoming actual proper friends. They also put to rest Steve's crush on Nancy with a very piss-weak line about how he's known for quite a while that it wouldn't work out between them. But despite that, he had been trying to insert himself in their relationship only days before this. It's a nice enough scene, but not one I'm keen to see some action in big moments, and I also feel like it just completely ignored how Steve has been behaving with Jonathan and Nancy the entire season up to this point. It's odd. They see Vecna's lair in the distance and head towards it, which is when we finally get the return to the good stuff again. In Camazots, the kids are all running through the forest, but poor old Derek's struggling for breath and lagging behind, even to the point of telling the others to leave him and to save themselves from Vecna's wrath. I will say that I'm loving the merging of delightful Derek and dipshit Derek here. He still has the temper and the foul mouth, but he's also brave and self-sacrificing. He knows that he's struggling to keep up, and thus he's willing to potentially let Vecna violently kill him or take him back rather than risk the rest of the group. I really do love this kid. Al and Carly turn up and they realize that if Vecna isn't here chasing them, then he's woken up and he's doing something in the real world, obviously trying to disrupt their efforts. This is when we cut to Hopper for one of the most intense scenes of the episode that really gets to the heart of his character and his fears. Unable to get in contact over the radio with either Lucas or Dustin, he turns around and notices barrels of Agent Orange, which is where you as the viewer understand that Vecna's going after Hopper to try to weaken Al and Carly's position. I thought this was really clever as well, because you know that he can't actually be in the lab himself because he doesn't have the time, and if he left his creepy fortress to go the rift a ways away, which is directly above the lab, he would run into the party and he'd have to fight them. Good God, that would have been a massacre, wouldn't it? So Hopper approaches the battles to see if they're real, and they seem to be, and things just get even worse for him here and expose the heart of his character and the issues that he faces in regards to Al putting herself in danger. He sees his late daughter Sarah, who claims that he knew what would happen to her and what's going to happen to Al, before he's shown Carly and Eleven deciding to stay in the Upside Down when the bomb goes off to ensure the cycle ends with them and Dr. K can't restart the program to create super children that the government can control or use as weapons or spies. Hopper calls Vecna a liar, and Vecna hits him with the classic villain line of, "I am many things, but not a liar," and appears appears before Hopper, who shoots at him, only for Vecna to disappear, and for him to realize he just shot into Al's tank. He opens the little window door thing and sees through the glass that she's been shot, and honestly she looked dead, so he starts bashing on the glass, causing it to slowly crack and break to get her out to save her. This part was truly incredible. I fully bought into it on the first watch through, and I thought it was such a clever plan by Vecna, and really made him into an imposing threat. I do have to ask though, is there any reason the bullets didn't hit the tank and Al inside? After all, I know that it's all going on inside Hopper's mind to a point, but he still clearly walks down there and clearly smashes the glass. So why did the bullets not do anything in that case? Did the metal stop them instead or something? It's just really strange. He starts breaking the glass, and this can be heard echoing in Camazotz, with Al then vanishing as she re-enters the waking world, followed by Carly and Max. Now the kids are all alone, and with the tank destroyed, Al won't be able to get back in there and help them. That being said, is there any reason she can't? I thought the prior reason she couldn't find him was he was too far away, as in the abyss is too far away to search from Hawkins. Hence why when she used the bath in Nevada, she could reach him as he was in the Upside Down, whilst in her bath at her home, she couldn't because beyond the Upside Down is a step too far. Since they're all now pretty close, couldn't she just put on her blindfold? We've seen her do this previously after all, like in season 3 when she spies on the boys with Max from her house while they're in Mike's basement. I'll never really understand all of this kind of stuff, to be honest. Before we move on from this scene, I also want to kind of say, it felt like a missed opportunity. We know that Henry and Jim knew each other in high school. I'm pretty sure both are in that play that showcased in the stage show and also briefly appeared earlier when Al's team infiltrated Camazotz. It would have been cool to see a reference to their shared past and straight up have Vecna acknowledge him to his face. Apparently Jim and Joyce do discuss this kind of thing off screen if I remember one of the Duffer statements correctly, so I just don't get why you wouldn't want that kind of thing to play out on screen. It creates a deeper connection between the characters and a reason to fight against him, but also a reason for Vecna to acknowledge them. The revelation of Henry being their classmate feels so undercooked now, you know? I mean, just think about it. Henry steals Joyce's son and spends years tormenting him and using him. He kills their other classmate and the brother of his high school love when he sets his demodogs on Bob in season 2. He's constantly hunting Hopper's daughter across the seasons as well, and serves as one of the big dangers. He probably knew Ted and Karen, and he put both of them in intensive care, and then snatched their youngest daughter. There's just so much he could have tapped into for the character that they never implemented, or seemingly even thought about, and it's such a shame. Max and Vicky are found behind the bookshelf because when Max wakes up from her trance, apparently she gasped too loudly, and the soldiers were able to hear her, which feels a little bit convenient because they'd already searched the bookshelf room, but okay. Beyond a passing glance during the arrest scene, this is also the last time we see them until the epilogue, and it's actually the last time I think we see Vicky at all in the show. I know she isn't the most relevant or important character overall, but at the same time, it's still a pretty dull ending for her coupled with the implications in the epilogue because she was a lot of fun. Everybody else is pretty much used to all the monsters and the danger, and so having somebody regular was interesting in that way. The soldiers head into the basement and Dr. K finds the team's plan, which in turn should have alerted her to the danger and what's going on, but apparently not. Stuff like this is what makes me shake my head at the whole military subplot and shows that it was severely undercooked. In that documentary they made about the ending of season 5, you can see that the writers really struggled with the final scripts of the season, and based on a lot of what's happening here, you can tell. We return to Camazotz to see Holly and the other kids panicking now that their guides have been forcibly taken back to the Upside Down, and Holly gets the first of her numerous hero/leader moments when she tells all the kids to listen up and that the plan hasn't changed. She tells them they need to get to the cave as Vecna can't hurt them there, and so off they go. I gotta say that I've loved Holly's storyline this season. She's probably one of my favourite additions of the show and has really elevated things quite a lot. Even when there has been poor writing surrounding a large number of the characters, I think it rarely ever affects Holly's arc at all, and so I've largely enjoyed all her scenes as a result. We then return to the lab where Carly's frustrated and wants to return to Camazotz because the kids are all alone there with Henry, and she's demanding Al get them back in there. I know that Carly's not everybody's favourite character, but I will say that I really like her character as being consistent. I mean, let's not forget, she wants to die and wants Al to die to ensure that no more children are made to suffer because of their powers and the pursuit of such powers by the government. Here, she is more emotive than she's been pretty much all season, and it's because Henry's booted them out of his mind, and there are still kids trapped in there with him who will suffer fates just as bad as theirs in the lab. Al and Carly start to argue because Al wants to go into the abyss to help the others kill Henry face to face, whilst Carly thinks that they don't have time as Henry will be able to keep moving the worlds. Al says she doesn't want to give up, which is when we dive back into that storyline, when Hopper tells her that this is exactly what she's doing because he knows that she intends to kill herself with Carly after the battle with Henry. She refuses to answer him and attempts to brush him off, which prompts him to say that in that case he won't be detonating the the bomb, and he won't destroy the Upside Down, at least until he knows she's safe and sound on the other side. Al tells him that if he doesn't destroy it after they kill Henry, that nothing matters, but is this even true? I mean, the Mind Flayer when they killed Henry seems like it was actually dead, and on top of that, they no longer think of the Mind Flayer as its own thing anymore. They think it's all simply Henry pulling all of the strings, so what does she think happens when he dies? The Upside Down would just stay there forever, but without the Lord of the Hive Mind, if the demos even lived, they would just be beasts again, with no plan or strategy. So the proper endgame would be simply America having access to some random wormhole world, and then probably eventually being able to explore the abyss and getting access to a bunch of random space resources. That's about it, right? I'm not sure how it fits the bill of nothing matters. Hopper keeps telling her he's not going to go through with it, and thus Carly pulls a gun on him, claiming that he's been turned by Henry, whilst Al says they have to end the cycle, and the only way to do that is for her to die. She is the one with Henry's blood, which can then be used to create more children with powers. Here, Hopper gives off one of the best pieces of dialogue in the entire episode, where he tells her that they can end the cycle, but not like this. He says that from the moment she was born, she had her mother taken away from her, she had her childhood taken away from her, she was attacked, manipulated, and abused. He says that life has been extremely unfair, but she needs to fight for the happy days that lay on the other side, for having a future and a family of her very own. He says that they will find a way to make it real because she deserves it. It's so beautiful that Carly lowers her gun and realizes that he's right. That's obvious on her face. It's seriously some of the best writing of the season, and some great acting as well. So why the hell do they end it the way they do? It really just seems like they're building to some big changing of her mind that never comes, and leaves you feeling hollow as a result. That's the thing about this finale, and honestly this season. It has a lot of really awesome scenes that are then ruined or made less powerful once you know how it all ends. It's at this point the military appears, and Murray radios to warn the trio, setting up another big confrontation, and we head back to Camazotz. The kids all make it back to the cave, or at least most of the kids do. Poor old Derek has once again fallen behind, and so Holly the Heroic charges back out to find him and grabs him in the nick of time, with Henry appearing through a portal and actually sprinting after them, which was horrific and scary. After all, no matter the context, we have always seen him power walk at best, even when Holly escaped him in the abyss, or when Max got her hands on Holly and was helping to get her to the cave. Here though, he's full on sprinting, which makes him seem all the more terrifying, especially when he unleashes his vine hands and grabs onto Holly and has those crazy eyes. This dude has some of the best hateful, insane facial expressions I've ever seen. If nothing else, he certainly has a career where he can play psychopaths and murderers for sure. He seizes hold of Holly and almost gets her, but Derek grabs her and manages to pull her free. How does he overpower Vecna here? I don't know. Maybe it's because he's an absolute Chad. Maybe it's because they were halfway in the cave and Vecna was too scared to hold on any longer than he did. Maybe it was a little bit of both. Regardless, he's told to suck Derek's fat one, and the kids retreat inside the cave to safety. Okay, so before we go any further, I've had to split up this video because it kept getting done in for copyright reasons. Obviously, it will continue on with the aptly named part 2, so enjoy.